They went to church. Or going to church.
It might just be interesting. Council meeting of August 3rd, 2022 to order. We are meeting remotely and hybridly, which is allowed by state law through March 31st, 2023. Barbara, roll call, please.
Connie Denham. Here. Salem Derby.
Present.
Omar Gomez. JP Kaczynski. Dave Munier. Tom Peak.
Here.
Brad Riley.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Owen Zaret.
Okay, and we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, so we have before we go into public speak time, we have some minutes to be approved, and those minutes are from July 6th. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Approve minutes from July 6th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's nice to do these voice votes.
Never been able to do that. I like
Great.
that.
So, public speak time. If anybody's here that'd like to address the council, you can have 2 minutes to address the council on any item that's not specifically being discussed tonight, or if it is.
How about those two?
Okay, it looks like, and if you want to, I'm new to this, but if you want to raise your hand to speak publicly, if you are hybrid, then you can use the raise hand feature, and we will try to. It doesn't look like any.
On this side.
Okay.
Usually comes up on the image.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing none, it looks like we can move on. So communications from elected officials, boards, and committees, and I don't see Jamie, who I think.
Jamie's on vacation.
Oh, I thought
Somebody's supposed to.
someone was supposed to come here. Let me see if I can just look at Jeff's email really quickly.
Yeah, I think she's still on
'Cause-
vacation.
Jamie's going to be attending for the ADA presentation. She can answer basic questions about Reservation Road.
Well, it's 6 o'clock.
So, I guess maybe Jamie didn't figure that we would be going this quickly.
We'll get
And so, and you know what we'll do is, well, let's just jump right into correspondence announcements from the President and Vice President. And we have Chief Norris here. So I might as well, instead of having you sit there, do nothing, might as well have you come up and address the council and let us know. Yeah, and I'll get there. All right, thank you, Chief.
Yes, no, and thank you very much, Council, for allowing me to speak with you briefly tonight. One of the initiatives the mayor and I have had over the last couple of years is, as we look to bring on new firefighters, is to continually diversify our department to make sure we reflect the demographic out here in the city of Easthampton. Easthampton is a civil service department, so when we hire people, those individuals are hired off of a statewide entry-level firefighter exam. The posting for that exam recently came out. The deadline to apply is August 30th, with the actual exam date, the written exam, is on October 24th. So one of the initiatives that we're going to take on over the next 30 days here prior to that deadline is to get out in the community and conduct some workshops to make sure we, as much as possible, try to educate the community, the different areas throughout the city about the entry-level exam, what it entails to be a firefighter, and then also provide assistance as needed to help people sign up. There may be people, for example, in the community who don't have access to a computer. They don't have access to internet and things of that nature. So really, I'm really here to follow up with this group here of city representatives and leaders to ask for your help, to help promote and get the word out about the entry-level firefighter exam. And also kind of give me some direction as to areas you think would be beneficial to conduct these workshops. We can travel anywhere with a laptop and show up and help people sign up for that. I did get some great feedback from a number of you already, so thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. But certainly, if there's any other suggestions or ideas, please let me know. And I'd like to get that publicized, hopefully by the end of this week, to start getting the word out as to where we're going to conduct these workshops. So that's really all I want to do, is follow up with that email. Many of you have been greatly helpful already, in regards to bringing forward some thoughts and ideas. But please share the word about that, and once we get the flyer posted, please share that with your constituents out there as well. So, and certainly if any questions are out there, please track it down at any time. So,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Chief. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we can jump back in time on our agenda, and it looks like Jamie's here, so we can go into the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan and presentation. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Webb, the Assistant Planner. I'm here tonight with Jim Mazik in person and Mike Kennedy virtually, both from the Center for Living and Working, who actually put together this plan. I'm just going to take very brief to just explain why we're bringing it to you, and then I'm going to turn it over to our consultants who can actually go through it and explain what they found. So the self-evaluation and transition plan, it's a required document under the American with Disabilities Act. We originally completed one for the city in 1993 with a minor update in 2009. It should be regularly updated, especially as the city acquires new properties, or there's changes in buildings or facilities, builds new schools, things like that. We haven't done that. So we received funding in November from the Mass Office on Disability to hire consultants to work with us to complete this plan. We evaluated all the city's programs, services, buildings, facilities, and recreation areas, as well as a good bit of the sidewalks in the downtown area, and sidewalks that connect to other major routes outside of the downtown. This was the first time we had received funding from MOD. We had actually applied for 5 years in a row and been denied every time. This plan goes through each of those areas I just mentioned, coming up, listing the deficiencies that were found, as well as provides a prioritized list at the end of the plan, which shows how we should be addressing those in order of priority, based not just on what are the biggest deficiencies, but also the facilities, which ones are used the most and would have the most impact for people with disabilities. This completion list plan also opens up funding opportunities from the state to address these deficiencies. Now that we have a plan, we can start to apply for grants to actually start to reduce the problems that we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Mazik and Mike Kennedy. So, Jim, would you like to?
There.
Yes, please. And if you wouldn't mind, just state your name and for the record.
The other guy's on
Yep.
Jim Mazik. I'm actually going to turn over to Mike to let him just introduce himself, give a few seconds about him, his background, back over to myself. I'll do the same, and then I'm going to do the overall overview. Mike's going to go back and talk about the self-eval. I'll talk about the transition plan, just in general, because we told we had 15 minutes, and these normally take an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay.
So you're going to get what I'm going to call the 70 RPM version once we get going, and just hit the major areas. So with that, Mike, if you want to just introduce yourself and your background and with CLW and that sort.
Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, good. Thank you, Jim. Yes, my name is Mike Kennedy. I represent the Center for Living and Working, and partnership with Jim Mazik. We did administer your self-evaluation transition plan, and just on behalf of myself and Jim, or should I say myself, LW and Jim Mazik, thank you for trusting us to administer your plan. And just want to give a shout out to Jamie and Jeff, who have been our go-to, contacts this whole time, and to all the staff that we worked with over the couple months. So with that being said, do you want me to go straight into the self-evaluation bullet points, or do you want to, Jim, do you want to, do your brief intro of what the ADA is?
Yeah, I'm going to do a brief intro, then the format, and then we'll turn over to you for self-eval.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I'll mute myself until I'm due again.
See me in 3 minutes.
Okay.
So actually, I don't work for CLW. I'm a subcontractor to CLW. I'm a certified professional planner by trade, 40 years planning experience, past 32 with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, you're probably familiar with. I was deputy director, also oversaw the CD department. We did a lot of work in Easthampton over the years, dating back to Stuart Beckley, and then I'm going to forget her name now.
Jessica Allen.
Jessica Allen, I always do that. And now with Jeff. So that being said, so again, I've been partnering with CLW we've been a joint venture for a good number of years, maybe 10, 12 years. And collectively, we have, even prior to that, probably 40 of these plans under a belt. In the past 2.5 years, we've completed 17 of these over from Berkshire County to Boston. So, and that's my post-retirement job now, doing this and working with Mike and CLW. So I'm going to go briefly the format. I'm going to talk a bit about the ADA, 521 CMR, and then the plan format itself. For those of you not familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it was signed into law back in 1990 by George H.W. Bush. It's a civil rights law. It's meant to ensure that there's equal access to all services and programs, regardless of one's physical or mental impairment. There are 5 titles under the ADA. The title that's really we're concerned about here tonight is Title II, which covers jurisdictions of local government, and also that's what requires the creation of a self-evaluation and transition plan. 521 CMR is a specialized section of the state building code. It is strictly a building code. It is only triggered by construction that's being done, the amount of work versus the percentage of the value of the building. So again, normally I go into much more detail, but because with time being here. So the plan content and format, we have a front end. I'm going to go back to that in a second. We have a self-evaluation piece. There's 11 areas we look at. Mike's going to talk about that in a few minutes. The transition plan, which is actually the facility assessments. And then we have the appendices, which include any recommended policies, procedures. We have our survey form. We have funding sources in there, and we did a prioritization of projects per Jamie and Jeff's request. So we like to do the front end. It's pretty much similar for all the plans we do. We modify it as needed per municipality, and we're constantly updating because we want to see that as like a one-stop shopping center for municipality. If they have an issue on ADA, they can go. It's in your plan. So the things we have in that is we talk in more detail about the ADA and the various titles and what they encompass. We have other federal accessibility regulations in there and what the enforcement action is, what the contact information is. We have a whole big section on 521 CMR in more detail. We have a section on alterations to historic properties and the exceptions that are involved and required. EV charging stations. So there is technically no regulations on EV charging stations, but there are regulations on parking spaces, level, reach range, accessible routes, and there's some general guidance out there. So we have a section on EV charging stations. Actually, your charging stations here are fine. Many we've looked at are not. We have 3 or 4 pages plus maybe on emergency preparedness for persons with disabilities, and that's becoming more of a larger issue for municipalities. We have a section on ADA service animals versus emotional support animals. That's becoming an issue more and more. We also have a section on ADA compliant toilets with examples. Municipalities lease accessible toilets. None of the ones that Mike in all our years have ever been ADA compliant. Typically, the grab bars are too high, the dispensers too high, there's not enough clear width from the front or the side of the toilet. So if you're leasing what's deemed as an accessible, you should get your money's worth. It should be ADA compliant. And we also have a section on emergency wash stations. This is something we've come up more recently. You'll see these, we had the fire chief here, police fire, your schools and your science labs. Typically, these showers are too high, and/or they don't have the ring, which you need to opt to use with a closed fist or a loose grip. And if the Y wash stations are also too high or no knee clearance. So we've come across some really great examples in new construction buildings in schools and in public safety complexes. So we have that in here. We have photographic examples again. So that's something in the future you do in a building, you need one of those and say, oh, let's look at our plan. We have that in there. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mike to talk the bullet points on his self-eval with things that we came up with and noticed. And then I'll come back on the transition plan.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
All right, thanks, Jim. So yes, as Jim said, as Jim stated, I'm going to be doing this my piece in at 78 RPM, and there'll be much more. There's much more detail in the actual self-evaluation portion of the plan. So I'm just going to read a few bullet points to folks. In no particular order. First, consider an expanded public notice, and we have a sample, provided in the plan already. Easthampton actually does have something in place now, but what we have is more detailed. Second is post the ADA grievance procedure on the city's website. There is a grievance procedure in place, and it's on the Commission on Disabilities page. And we just recommend also put it in, on the city's website itself. And everybody can hear me still, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. Adopt a reasonable accommodations policy and request form. Again, we have a sample provided in the appendices of the ADA plan. And incorporate reasonable accommodations language in job descriptions. The next is ensure that job descriptions include non-discriminatory or inclusive include non-discrimination, discriminatory or inclusive language such as stationary position versus stand or sit, move, traverse versus walk, detect versus see. A lot of job descriptions, even though it's in an office setting, had. Candidate must be able to, walk and do that. And, a lot of jobs like that, you don't need to walk. I'm a living proof, being a wheelchair user myself. Next is inspect facilities to ensure properly maintained, to make sure that they're properly maintained. So like some of the things we find everywhere, not just unique to Easthampton, is door opening forces much higher than allowed, too fast closing speeds, bathroom stall doors that don't no longer self-close, and also maintenance of accessibility features like walkways and ramps. We do get snow up here, but and ensuring a reasonable amount of time that that the accessible routes are properly shoveled. Let's see. The other one we spoke at length about yesterday with the Commission on Disability. Consider purchasing a portable assistive listening system. And why portable? Because people could use these during the city council meeting, or if one of the boards or commissions are having another hearing somewhere else, that they can be available for people who are hard of hearing. The And then, just follow plan guidance on emergency preparedness in addressing, persons with disabilities. As Jim mentioned, in the front end portion, we go, pretty deep into emergency preparedness and incorporating people with disabilities, including being, part of, the actual planning process. So again, those are, the biggest bullet points that we came up with in our, survey. And again, much more detail in the actual self-evaluation. And, at the end of this presentation, doesn't mean we're going to go away. If questions come up, we're available to ask and even follow up on. So that concludes my piece. Thank you for having us tonight. And I'm going to pass it back over to Jim.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure, I think you had in your packet, did you have a copy of the plan document in there? Okay, great. So so you've looked at that, on a transition plan piece, which is actually assessments, everyone is kind of an independent, taking on its own. So we like to set it up so we have a general description of what that facility is, we have a photograph, we have a narrative description of what the areas of non-compliance, because if you want to do a quick read, you can see, well, what that is. And then that follows with a detailed table, which goes into specifics, great detail in terms of what the issue is, the code reference, state and federal, what needs to be taken. Then we look at priority, time frame, feasibility, and then a rough cost estimate. So that being said, I'm going to go through and just talk in the general types of things we found. I'm going to cover first buildings, then rec areas, and then the sidewalks and curb ramps. I'll mention 2 specific properties as we get into that point. So in general, across the board, parking, typically, some parking was fine, there was no parking at all, designated accessible, no van accessible parking. Signage was too low, it has to be at least 60 inches to the bottom, no more than 96 inches to the top, or the running slopes are greater than 2%. Level is 2%. If it's more than 2%, it's not level. In some cases, if they're outside drop boxes or airphone buzzers, they were too high. The reach range under the ADA is 48 inches, which is 6 inches lower than 521 CMR, so you have to go the stricter standard. In many cases, the accessible route, actually this applies to this building, from the parking to the front of the entrance, abrupt change of greater than 1/4 inch unbeveled or more than 1/2 inch beveled. So in this case, asphalt to concrete, one might be able to grind the concrete or do some infill to eliminate that, that transition. Doors, Mike mentioned doors, so the operating forces are 5 pounds for an interior door, 15 pounds for an exterior door. Those were exceeded regularly. 6 seconds closing speed under ADA, those were typically exceeded. Stair railings. Stair railings weren't always round or oval in shape. The rectangular, a good example is on your exit here on the side of the building. They're rectangular, there's no extensions at the top, 12 inches parallel to the ground or floor, and needs to be an extension at the bottom. The slope distance of 1 tread and 12 inches parallel to the ground or floor. So we found those throughout. Non-compliant knob-style hardware, you have a lot of that in this building. Lack of tactile designation signage or improperly mounted, either too high, too low on the door. I mentioned reach range, 48 inches. In some cases, doors with glass panes under the ADA, they can be no more than 43 inches above finished floor to the bottom. So if I'm in a wheelchair, I can see through as well if it's like that one there. I don't believe that, if that leads to stairs, it's not an accessible route, but if that led to a hallway leading somewhere else, that would be considered too high. So it'd either be frosting the pane or lower the glass. Drinking fountains, like behind you, they need to be high-low, and they need to have knee clearance. That obviously does not. And some of the tables and desks for areas here, could be in the library, need at least 27 inches knee clearance, and in some cases, and I don't think you had them here. In some places, they're non-compliant doorway widths. They need to be at least 32 inches in width for, a wheelchair to pass through. Protruding objects, so a lot of times we would find either, like a sanitary dispenser could possibly be one, or a defibrillator, most common. Anything that protrudes more than 4 inches from a wall into accessible route of travel at a height of 27 inches to 80 inches above finished floor is a protruding object. I cannot pick that up with cane detection. So it needs to be something placed under that for cane detection, or that item lowered or relocated, maybe in a corner, so it's not in an accessible route of travel. Staff kitchenettes lacking knee clearance and are too high by 2 inches or more. Bathrooms, various issues on bathrooms. Codecs were too high, dispensers were too high, sink piping under were not wrapped, guarded, or insulated. Grab bars were too low or too high. Toilet dispensers were located too far or too close to the front of the water closet. The flush controls were on the wrong side of the toilet, must be on the approach side, not the near side. The clearances on a toilet are 8 inches on center to the near wall, 42 inches to the far wall, 42 inches in front. In many cases, that was not met at all. In many cases, the heights of the toilets were too high or too low. They're 17 inches to 19 inches to the top of the seat. Sometimes they were higher or lower. Toilet paper dispensers over the grab bar we found in many locations. You can't have anything over the grab bars. That obstructs the use of the grab bars. Mirrors can be no more than 40 inches above finished floor to the top to the bottom of the reflecting surface. In many cases, it was 40 inches to the bottom of the frame around, if it was a thick frame, or in many cases, the mirror is just too high, which couldn't be used by wheelchair users. Stall doors, so stall doors must open out and not in. In many cases, stall doors were opening in because you need the maneuverability. You don't, once you open into that stall area, you don't necessarily always have that maneuverability with a wheelchair. In many cases, as Mike mentioned, the stall doors are not closing, and it's important because in many cases there weren't pull devices on both sides of the door. So if the door is not self-closing and is not interior pull device, then if I'm a wheelchair user, I got to try to reach down under the door and try to pull it closed. But if I had a pull device up here, I could just do that. And in some cases, some of the locking mechanisms were such they couldn't be operated and used with a closed fist. And that's why, like levers you have here, they need to be you can operate those with a closed fist. Similarly, locking mechanisms on stall doors, others need to be operated with a closed fist. So that's general in the buildings. On recreation area, there are 5 passive conservation areas that we looked at. Essentially, they're unimproved. And if there is no other improvements made to those sites, nothing else needs to be done. If you start going in, putting in benches, picnic tables, all things, then that raises some issues. In general, there are a lack of accessible routes to and around facilities, including to benches, picnic tables, to bleachers, to player seating if it was a ball field. I mean, many were, but I'm saying we found this in many other locations, in some of the locations. If you have a bleach area, there needs to be a level area for a wheelchair adjacent to that bleach area, as well as adjacent to a bench. We didn't find on playgrounds a need to accessible route of travel fully around a playground area, and then there must be an accessible route to the play components within the area. We found mostly grass or wood chips. Wood chips are not a compliant accessible route of travel medium, but can be used as a fall zone for that area right around the play area. But you might use stone dust, you could use asphalt, you could rubberize as for the accessible route on the interior. And most of the playgrounds, except for the schools, didn't have any accessible play equipment in them at all. So under the ADA, if you have chain link gates accessing an area, which you have a lot of them, then there needs to be 10 inches flush at the bottom of that gate on the push side. So if I'm a wheelchair user again, I'm using that flush plate to push that open, as opposed, and if it's chain link, I might get myself caught in that somehow. So that's under the ADA. That was typical, and we find that everywhere. Bathroom facilities were typically not ADA compliant in the recreation areas we found. Concession stand counters were typically too high. Service counters in this building, service counters are 36 inches. But food-related counters are 34 inches. So we found a lot of, on the concession areas, they were higher, anywhere from 36 to 43 and beyond. And again, when there were drinking fountains, they were not high-low. 2 issues to note on recreation areas. Plasky Park, the gazebo, there's no accessible route to the gazebo itself, and the railings are not compliant. They're rectangular, there's no top and bottom extensions. And on Nashawanack, you've got the 3 ramps and then the docks. Unfortunately, the ramps don't have compliant railings. The transition plates, the way that they're mounted, the transition plates, which are 24 inches long, have running slopes of up to 29-30%. The max, I believe, if my memory serves me, for docks is 12. I think it's 12% for 18 inches. So even that, so that's a concern. I mean, with a regular wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair, very difficult. And at the bottom of the dock, and I mentioned this to Jamie and Jeff earlier on, requirement is either tactile warning strips, detectable warning strips, or curb protection. We would recommend curb protection, because if I'm sight impaired or in a wheelchair, and now you've got that really steep slope, I'm coming down, I might lose a little control, and I want something to prevent me from going off the side in that dock. And so either one of those, and that is a really easy, simple fix to do, and it's also, I think, a good safety precaution to do. Okay, I'm almost done here. So sidewalks and curb ramps, there are a number of streets that we were specifically asked to look at by Jamie and by Jeff. So in general, we found that throughout the city, lack of detectable warning strips, lack of curb ramp level landings, lack of or excessive curb ramp running slopes. The max on a curb ramp running slope is 8.3% for the main slope and 10% on the flared sides. Many cases, those are far exceeded. Non-compliant transitions from the street to actually the curb ramp. Some places it was just granite curbing, or maybe it was 2 or 3 inch rise. In many cases, there are sidewalk, crosswalk, curb ramp obstructions. Some cases there are manhole covers or water main covers in the sidewalk, about an inch, which that's an abrupt change, which alters the access. Overgrowth into the sidewalk, restricting the clear width to 30 inches, must be 36 inches. In some cases, storm drains were related right in the crosswalk. The grates like 2 inches in size, far exceed what's allowed. In many cases, the sidewalk cross slopes. You cannot really regulate the running slope because you have altering terrain, but the cross slopes must be at 2% or less. And in some cases, I mentioned on the sidewalk clear width, we had telephone poles which were replaced, and often the asphalt would be cut around those, and then the asphalt was never replaced. So actually, and you had a gap of maybe 1 to 3 inches. So that reduces the clear width in some of those locations, so maybe 20 inches or 22 inches or less, which is not suitable for a wheelchair. There are some protruding objects. Another clear width, which would be a policy issue, going back to your board. And I see this everywhere on trash day. Everyone puts their recycling bins in their trash bins right plop in the middle of the sidewalk. If I'm a wheelchair user, if I'm a walker user, if I'm pushing a baby carriage, I can't use a sidewalk. And I've got to find a way to get off that sidewalk, and it might be granite curbing. I've got to backtrack. So that's a policy issue that we tell municipalities you need to try to adopt that and enforce that you cannot leave your sidewalks, trash bins, recycling bins on the sidewalk and leave them there. They need to be placed elsewhere. And protruding objects. So some of the telephone guy wires were not, they were angled. They weren't, vertical and then across. And then some of the public safety crosswalk signage were extended into the accessible route within that 4-inch, 27-80 inches. So that, again, sight impaired, that could be an injury walking and not seeing that, obviously. We were asked to do prioritization of projects, and we did this based upon public use, degree of non-compliance, impact, and ease of barrier removal. So there's 4 areas that and there's a table in the back with the last appendix. You can look at that. And now it's just and you may have differences of opinion on how that's done. So to us, the things that would be most impact, sidewalks and curb ramps, because those are used by lots of people. Your library, because the issue's there, no vertical access. And parking is an issue as well. Non-park, accessible routes throughout to all the areas like picnic areas and grilling areas and other areas as well. And then also, I mentioned the National Wanted Pond and the docks and the ramps there. So those to us would be the top areas to look at and to focus on. So that's, the abbreviated version tonight. And if you folks have questions, we're willing to answer any.
Good. Councilor Rist.
So, I used to think that buildings that existed prior to ADA the law were grandfathered in until major renovation occurred in that building. Is that still the case?
That's under 521 CMR, because that's triggered by building code, but you get the other federal layer. So you can have people, individuals can file a complaint, and they have, and existing buildings do, and they would go to the Mass Office, the Actual Access Board, or to the Department of Justice. What this plan does for you, it gives you the federal protection, because you have a plan in place, and as long as you make a good faith effort to chip away as you can financially, squirrel away resources as you can, then, the intent is not to go after municipality for, on that basis. So you look at over time. And in some cases, some things just aren't feasible to do. So you may say, we're under the ADA, you can actually relocate a program or service or alter how it's provided, and that would comply under the ADA.
You answered my question, what was the city's liability? I mean, this is the right thing to do.
Yep.
And my concern was, do we have a liability and a deadline to get these things done? But it sounds like if we try to do it, and we're making a good faith effort in a priority list, we're okay.
You're okay?
We're not gonna get fined by the federal government.
No, but no one can prevent someone wants to file a lawsuit because whatever it is.
Or whatever, yeah.
But no, you're making a good faith effort. You say, no, we know that. It's in the plan. We know that's an issue. We're looking to address. We're building into our capital plan, or it's going to be part of the budget for DPW or Parks and Rec. Or we're going to set aside so much. Or you go on. You have CPA. Yeah. So so
we do.
All different ways you do it. Yeah.
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 Councilor Riley.
First I just wanted to thank you both, even just for this brief presentation. I know I was trying to follow along on the document just to see where you're at, and it's very extensive. And I just want to say, for those of us who do not have these kinds of disabilities, this stuff is really eye-opening for me. That there are all of these potential hazards that exist all around me, and I'm just completely ignorant to them because, even just talking about the things that are protruding off the ceilings, I would never have to worry about that, but I also don't walk with, a visibility cane. So thank you for bringing this stuff up. My question is, in terms of what you see in our community, now, as I was kind of taking this in, to me, this sounds really bad. Like, there's a lot of things that we need to do, and I understand that contextually in our country, we have a lot of work to do, but in your experiences with other communities, can you give us a kind of an idea? I mean, are we in okay shape, or is this something that we need to really get to work on?
I'll let Mike answer first, and I'm going to chime in after him because we've had this question quite a bit when we do these presentations.
Yep. By the way, the answer to your question is actually Easthampton did pretty well. I was even stating that at the Commission on Disability meeting, especially your outdoor spaces. We believe me, we did find some deficiencies, but overall, very impressive. I mean, I don't think there's any municipality out there anywhere that will, get a whole 100%. But just to elaborate a little, we point out a lot of things, and that's because, frankly, we're very thorough, almost a little too thorough. But you know what? A lot of money was paid to have us, do this self-evaluation transition plan. So we just wanted to make sure that you're getting your money's worth.
So I would just
does that help answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
and I just add, if you're going to rate, I mean, you'd probably be in a B plus, B-ish or so. I mean, I'm not going to name the community. Mike, you know which one I'm going to talk about here. This one we did, I think it was about a year and a half ago in Central Mass. And they had an EV charging station. And it was about yay high where you could actually access, to do. And it was in a gravel parking lot, all rutted out. and there was no accessible route even to get to it, so I'm trying to use it. So if I'm in a wheelchair, I cannot use it, I can't get to it, I can't do anything. And then the town hall, besides the non-compliant ramp into the building, was 3 levels. The meeting room, the large meeting room, on the, I think it was a third, I might have been the 3rd floor or 2nd floor, I can't remember, no elevator. And that's where all the public meetings were held. And the town manager's office was on the 2nd level, a small meeting room. That was not accessible, it was only accessible by stairs. So, I mean, you have an elevator here, the rooms, there's relatively accessible routes, I mean, yeah. So you're okay.
All right, thank you for contextualizing that, I appreciate it.
Did anybody else have a question? Anybody else? I have a quick question. So at our high school, the handicap accessible door where you can press the button and have the doors open isn't at the main entrance. It's at the back of the building. Is that okay? Is that something you guys noticed?
So you don't
or-
have to have, and this is actually a question that came up yesterday too. It's not mandated that you have to have an automatic door opener, but it's mandated that you need to meet the, not exceed the maximum opening force, which is 15 pounds per extra door, and meet the 6-second closing speed. And off the top of my head, I mean, I don't know, I have to look at the report, if it did or not in the main entrance. So now, if there's some reason that cannot be met, then you'd have to find a way to meeting it, and maybe that is by doing an automatic door opener. But automatic door openers by themselves are not required.
Okay.
They're very helpful, but not required. And when this is all came out, we are, I'm not gonna mention this, another town out in central Mass, more towards Boston, and they had the automatic door opener. The button was maybe over by that door, but the door to get into it was over here. By the time you press the button, wheeled over, the door's already shut. So it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
What architect? Never mind.
Yeah. So,
I don't know.
just, I guess, 2 quick final questions, I guess. Number 1, I guess, is a statement as well as a question. I'm hoping that our new elementary through middle school passed muster, if you were able to look at that. I'm hoping, because it's brand new. So I'm hoping that we're in good shape there. And then, secondly, it seems like this study potentially could open up pathways to money,
Yes.
which could then help us on our priority list. And I'm just wondering, is that something the planning department's working on that we'll see in the future as things unfold?
So we are starting to digest the prioritized list, and where we can, we will. It's also a lot of building operations, which is under DPW and the mayor, so it's a team effort more than just the planning department's gonna
Okay.
apply for some grants. We'll be working with Parks Department for mayor and DPW where we can.
So, read the section, read the transition plan on the elementary school, because yes, there are a number of issues.
Okay.
And some issues should be corrected by contractor, architect, OPM. But other issues are something more of a what do I want to call it? Well, it lies with 521 CMR. So 521 CMR, like some of the things with heights for drinking fountain, classroom drinking fountains and sinks and that sort of stuff, they don't differentiate between age level, grade level. They do for bathrooms, but not for sinks in general. So it makes no sense to have a sink that's 27 inches when you got pre-K or K, which are, should be down 24 inches or 20. So they put them at the height, which made sense. The access board recognized that, so technically they need to get a variance from the access board to leave those. And they have been they grant those, and I'm understanding they did apply. I mean, what they did made sense. So, I mean, but there are other issues there which need correction. We do have in the plan, one of the appendices has the funding sources that one can go after. And I know Jamie and Jeff, because that's their area of expertise, that they know what those are, and whatever works and makes sense, I'm sure they'll pursue.
Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You good?
Okay. And no other questions? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you very much for having us.
Yep, thank you.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Okay, take care. Take care, Rob.
Take care. So I believe we're at the mayor communications. I don't know if the mayor is on there, and I don't know how to check. So Mayor, if you're on the call, just unmute and let us know that you're there.
I don't think she is.
And I'm thinking maybe the mayor's not there, so I guess we'll just move on. Reports of standing committees, Finance, Council Rist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President. We will meet on August 24th, our next meeting, councilors. The reason for that, and I have to use that date, is because we are going to talk about the very important CPA agenda item that I'm moving there. And there's a CPA meeting on the 18th, which relates to that, so I had to do it after that. So that's why the meeting for finance is August 24th. And we will also discuss chapters 329 Acts of 1987. So I'll put it out there for everybody who wants to talk about that. I don't think we'll get to anything else on our agenda that night. It'll be 5 o'clock. It'll be in person because there'll be some people from City Space involved. So that's all. That concludes finance.
Thank you, Councilor Rist. And since Councilor Zaret's not here, I will take public safety today. So we did meet, I believe it was a couple weeks ago, I don't have the exact date, but we did meet. We had our quarterly review with the police chief from the police department. And I believe Councilor Zaret sent out a pretty detailed kind of summary of that. I think one of the things to mention was that the success that is being kind of garnered from the collaboration with the mental health partners and having those mental health professionals going out on calls has been really beneficial and has been really something that is a really positive thing for the city so far. We do have a meeting. Actually, I don't believe we have a public safety meeting set. It's property that I'm going to do. So, unless, oh, do we?
Isn't there one on the 11th?
Is that property or is that public safety?
Public.
Okay, so I guess we do have one. For some reason, I put it down as property. Yeah, we do. So August 11th at 6 p.m. is going to be the next public safety meeting, and that concludes.
Don't you have a motion?
And I do have a motion. So, and that is, so again, I guess this doesn't conclude. So, one of the things that we did talk about was the Votes Act requirement, which basically requires a police detail or constables at polling places. And Barbara gave us a kind of rundown on the history of that. It seems like constables are getting harder to come by these days. And so what I'll do is I'll read this from Councilor Zaret. Members of the council, the City Council Public Safety Committee met on July 12th, 2022 to discuss the recently passed Votes Act. As noted in the July 6th agenda packet, the purpose of this is to detail a sufficient number of police officers or constables for each building that contains the polling place for one or more precincts at every location therein, to preserve order and protect the election officers and supervisors from any interference with their duties, and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections. Present at our meeting were City Clerk Barbara LeBombard, Police Chief Alberti, who were able to provide knowledgeable feedback regarding appropriate numbers for constables allocated per building, allocation of police officers when school is in session, and allocation of police officers for ballot box transfer. We operated primarily under the assumption that we will continue voting at a single location, the high school. However, we agreed that these numbers are appropriate for multiple locations should we return to multiple voting locations at some point. And the committee recommended this in a vote of 3-0. And so I do have, unless anybody has any questions about this, it basically just it sets the numbers of police officers that are going to be at each building, and for ballot box transfers. And so this is something that I believe has come down from, this isn't something that we initiated. This is something that's becoming more common. Yes.
Knowing this, Barbara, I assume you put the money in the budget to handle the cost of police officers at these sites?
Well,
Or do we?
We, during regular voting, we have appointed constables who are just basically election workers who go through a little more of a screening process. But we have always budgeted money for police officers to pick up the ballots, and also, if school is in session, we have a police officer during polling.
I'm confused. The constables are not police officers,
No, they're
they're
not.
civilians.
They're civilians.
Does this
but-
ask us to put real police officers in
No.
place now?
No,
No, okay.
Could be either.
My mistake.
no, I've specified
Yep.
which.
All right, I
And so,
didn't
and
read
that's
it, obviously.
clarified in the motion.
Okay.
Any other questions before I read the motion? Okay. I move that at a minimum, the following number of election constables and/or police officers will be assigned for every location. Minimum number of constables per building when one or more two precincts vote, 2. If voting occurs in a school and classes are in session during polling hours, then 1 police officer will be assigned to every building where voting occurs during school hours. To ensure the security of voted ballots after the polls close, 1 police officer will be assigned to any building in which voting has occurred to transport the ballot safely back to the municipal building. The city clerk is designated and authorized to assign specific constables and/or police officers to work at the polling places in coordination with the police chief or a police department designee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? None? Okay, motion passes.
I'm liking this.
Yeah, right, I know, it's gonna be hard to go back. And so, yeah, thank you. So that concludes public safety and appointments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, a brief announcement for the boards and committees. Last week, I met with the directors of the newly formed Easthampton Tenants Organization and their bylaws subcommittee to write their official bylaws. As new community partners, I would encourage other counselors and the chairs of our community boards related to housing, aging, and disabilities to connect, as I'm certain that there are overlapping interests and shared goals. If this is something you'd like to do, I'm more than happy to facilitate those introductions. Their first directors meeting will be this Tuesday at 4 p.m., where they will formally adopt their bylaws. And then on July 27th, the appointment committee met to officially reorganize. We voted to recognize myself as the chair and Councilor Gomez as the clerk. Before us was the reappointment of Barbara Lombard to the position of clerk to the city council. Now, anyone that has ever attended a city council meeting since 1996 knows that the work that Barbara has done on behalf of this council. She records our votes, she produces our minutes, and has mentored us in some capacity relating to filing amendments, producing correct language for resolutions, and so much more. She's dedicated her career to this body and to the city of Easthampton, and for that, I'm incredibly thankful. We recommended her appointment in a unanimous vote, and I'm proud to put forward in the form of a motion the appointment of Barbara Lombard to the clerk to the city council with a term expiration date of August 31st, 2024.
Enthusiastic second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the reappointment of the city council clerk, Barbara Lombard. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, nobody's against, I don't think. Motion passes.
All right, and then the last order of business concerns the appointment process itself. As the new chair, I'd like to explore the processes of vetting appointees to our various boards and committees. As you all know, some boards are bound by mass general laws or have positional authority that directly affects the work of our government. Others, while integral to our community's work, are advocacy groups that do not require as thorough a vetting. It's important that we treat each committee appointment with the care that it requires. And additionally, I'd like to establish an inclusive communication plan that considers the chairs of these boards, the appointees, and the mayor's office to explain the appointment process, giving all parties the opportunity to participate. So in approximately 6 months, I'd like to report back what I have for some best practices, and then potentially have conversations about amending Rule 11H. Our next meeting is Thursday, August 11th at 5:30 p.m. in Conference Room B in the basement, and thus concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilor Riley. And I will take ordinance just to let everybody know. The ordinance committee had met to get our new member up to speed. And so now that we have done that, we are going to meet again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. In Conference Room 1. And we are going to be specifically looking at the vacant storefront ordinance with a little bit more detail. We have gotten some feedback from the building commissioner, who unfortunately can't be there tomorrow night, but did give feedback, so we can start making a pathway towards getting that ordinance closer to being finalized. Again, for people that are interested in the CPC ordinance that has been sent to the city attorney, we are still awaiting some feedback from them, so at this point we're not really doing anything with that. And we did preliminarily start to talk about the request from the mayor to establish an ordinance regarding flags and banners on city flagpoles, and so we've started to discuss that a little bit. And that concludes, oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, yes. Vacant storefront ordinance. I am going to, in the form of a motion, request a 90-day extension.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, motion passes. That brings us to property. And God, this is like, I should have assigned this to somebody else because you guys are gonna have to hear me talk again.
to the club.
Yeah, right. Since the members of property are not here tonight, we do have one item that does need a public hearing scheduled, and that is a poll location request for 277 Main Street. And in the form of a motion, I would like to set a public hearing for 6:15 in these chambers on September 7th.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And that concludes property for tonight. Rules and government relations.
Yes, we will meet on August 17th at 9 PM. We'll discuss both items on our agenda, the gun violence resolution and the conflict of interest exemption request for the Conservation Commission Chair. That'll be 5 PM. It'll be in person.
Okay, great. And we don't have any old business or pending, so that brings us right to new business. Councilor Rist?
Fuel storage goes to public safety. right?
Yes, yep.
I move that the fuel storage amendment request from River Valley LLC be moved to public safety for review, and that a public hearing be set for said item for September 7th as well.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the fuel storage amendment request from River Valley LLC? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody against? No, motion passes. Okay,
We have 2 poll requests. One was put in tonight on an amended agenda. I move that the poll location request for Loudville Road and the poll location request for Cherry Street be sent to Property Committee for review, as well as a public hearing for both items be set for September 7th.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No. Okay, motion passes.
We have a state primary warrant that needs to be moved and signed tonight, so unless there's objection, I move that we approve the state primary warrant as submitted by the city clerk this evening.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just so everybody knows, this is something that we do every year, so,
Every election.
every election, which is almost every year, so. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody against? No, seeing none, motion passes.
The new city infrastructure goes to property.
Property.
I move that the new city infrastructure master plan and quick action presentation be sent to Property Committee for review.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to send the infrastructure master plan and quick actions to committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No, motion passes.
Are
I'm-
you okay with that being, they asked about doing a presentation on the 7th?
I think that should be, Omar can make that decision, but I think it should be fine.
Be a
Long night.
long meeting.
Yeah.
Mayoral appointments, I move that the 2 mayoral appointments be sent to the Appointments Committee for review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send the 2 mayoral appointments to Appointment Subcommittee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No, motion passes.
We typically do this in one motion on the evening it's presented, the donation account.
Yep.
That's what we do, correct, Barbara?
Yep.
So I move that we do,
Read it.
okay. I move that we approve to establish a Mount Tom North Trail donation account pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Approval is hereby given to establish an account for purpose of receiving funds designated for Mount Tom North Trail.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to establish a donation account for the Mount Tom North Trail. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? No, motion passes. Okay,
We have the CPA bonding finance request submitted by the CPA for Old Town Hall second floor city space project. I move that it be sent to the Finance Committee, as well as a public hearing be set for September 7th in these chambers.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to, for the Old Town Hall second floor city space project and a public hearing for September 7th. Any further
Let me
discussion?
just ask this. Normally, there's a appropriation, like, kind of like a supplemental or an interdepartmental form that comes with this. This doesn't have.
No, it doesn't need it. It's a bonding request.
No, usually we do that.
I got this
too.
from the lawyer.
Usually it's a similar thing and the motion is attached. Perhaps we should.
Never, no.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Well, this is what I was told to do
So-
by the city, by the
So how
attorney,
about
so
we go
I'm,
forward with this, and if we need to bring it back, if, after you
Because
guys
there's
discuss it at
no-
finance?
Yeah, you remember with the signature sheet and the cover, even though it just says.
I can submit, I can do that.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think for the purposes of this particular item, the motion is what was required, but the appropriation request, which is bonding with all the signatures, we can submit that for
Once
the
it goes
next
to committee.
meeting and be part of the public hearing, because it's the same thing. And I'll have that woman right there do it.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the CPA bonding finance request for Old Town Hall, second floor, and the public hearing for September 7th. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No, motion passes.
The Eversource easement, that's property too, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm having a bad day.
No, it's fine. You're
I move that the Eversource easement request to install an 8-inch gas main off Liberty Street be sent to property for review.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to send the easement request to install an 8-inch gas main off Liberty Street to property. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No, motion passes.
And finally, the Reservation Road Land Grant Conservation Restriction request is being sent to property for review. I move that it be sent.
And I have a motion here that I think we can do this tonight.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a revision of the one that was just voted.
Yeah, Jamie, you want to come up and, yeah, because this is the one, this is revised
Oh,
from
I
the one
didn't
we
know.
just voted. Yep, no, it's no problem.
Jamie Webb, Assistant Planner. So thank you for taking a look at the Reservation Road conservation restriction again. This is the second attempt at it. The first attempt, it was voted on last month and approved by City Council. When we brought it back to Kestrel Land Trust to actually get their signatures on it, they realized that they had a couple changes that they wanted to make to it, which then required back and forth with the city solicitor, and we agreed on those changes. It was sent to the state. The state's reviewed it and signed off on the changes. The Conservation Commission has also signed off on those changes, and the city's attorney has approved it. So at this point, it's just coming back to the City Council. Basically, the two changes that were being requested by Kestrel that were not in the original restriction were adding a section called third-party impairment, which basically protects the city and Kestrel if some third party who's not part of this agreement violates the terms of the conservation restriction. Kestrel's agreeing not to go after the city for those damages if the city wasn't in effect condoning it. So, for instance, ATV use, if the city says, was the city notified that ATVers are on the property, and the city puts up signage saying no trespassing with ATVs or whatever, then the city's not going to be sued by Kestrel to make those repairs to the property. Kestrel will then go after the actual people who are doing that. But if in the case that Kestrel would say, we notified you and you still are condoning it, you're not doing anything to stop this activity, then this third-party impairment section that's where it kicks in. The other piece about it was this reserves some extra space for expansion to a parking lot area on Reservation Road for that. It's not going to be built now, but it's just putting it into the conservation restriction. So in the future, if a parking area is needed, we don't have to go back and forth with the state and with the City Council to allow it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So I do have a motion here. And so this is the Reservation Road Conservation Restriction revised City Council motion. I move to approve the foregoing conservation restriction from the City of Easthampton acting by and through its Conservation Commission to Kestrel Land Trust Incorporated in the public interest pursuant to Section 32 of Chapter 184 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? No. Motion passes. Wonderful.
Move
Okay.
we adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. We need-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is closed.
We have to sign the warrant?